Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about the social exchange theory. So, some basic information about the social exchange theory. It's common to hear the theory referenced as just exchange theory, as there are many different theories that take social exchange into their concepts. For example, the social penetration theory and the act of self-disclosure. Self-disclosure is technically a social exchange, and there are many theories that use forms of social exchange within their theories. So it's common to hear the theory referenced as just exchange theory. But the most popular theory, and the one that we're going to be focusing on, is John Thibault and Harold Kelly's theory of interdependence, which is often referenced as the social exchange theory, as the framework of their theory fits social exchange so well. Thibault and Kelly's theory relies heavily on self-interest and the role that it plays in our interpersonal relationships, as fulfilling our self-interest results in the satisfaction of our relationships. So, looking a little bit deeper into social exchange theory, we're going to talk about the cost and reward aspect, which I think is the most important concept of the theory. The worth that we find in our relationships is calculated by evaluating the cost and the rewards that come from the relationship. A cost can be defined as anything that holds a negative value to an individual or any work that they have to put forth that isn't exactly ideal to them. Whereas a reward is what an individual gains from a relationship. It's anything with a positive value that is ideal to them. Naturally, humans will seek to maximize their rewards and avoid costs, as this is what an ideal relationship would be. Now, as we grow older and mature, our standards for what qualifies as a cost and reward will change, depending on what our personal needs are at that time. This also explains why the standards vary from person to person, as it all depends on what their individual needs are. So what I would define as a cost or reward isn't exactly what you would define as a cost or reward, and what I define as a cost and reward right now isn't exactly what I will think 10, 20 years from now. It all changes as we grow and go through life. Overall, the evaluation process of cost and reward within relationships will determine the future of it and whether or not it is worth pursuing to us. Going a little bit more into how social exchange theory works, we're going to talk about some of the key terms involved in the theory. The evaluation process that I just discussed that individuals do is based on two measurements of satisfaction, which are the comparison level and the comparison level for alternatives. The comparison level, or the CL, is a standard measurement of what an individual thinks that they should be receiving within a relationship. CLs are variant among individuals, as they're basically just the rewards and the costs that we see, and they tend to be based on our past experiences and our past relationships. A person's CL can simply be defined as our expectations within a relationship. Now, a comparison level for alternatives is defined as the evaluation of a relationship based on what other alternatives an individual has outside of that relationship. So it's basically the realistic alternate options that we have left if the relationship that we're evaluating is not pursued. It's a comparison of what life would be like if that relationship is terminated, and if the rewards and the costs that the relationship contains are comparable to what life would be like without the relationship at all. And that is how we complete the evaluations. From within the relationship, an individual will engage in specific behavioral sequences, which are actions designed to achieve goals. These sequences are very important in terms of social exchange because when individuals engage in these designed actions, they become dependent on their partner for cooperation to a certain extent in the exchange. The behavioral sequences are acted on in hopes of receiving a predisposed response, which would be their goal. This dependence gives the individual a certain degree of power in a relationship because their partner is depending on them to give them what they want. Now, in terms of power, there are two types of power that an individual holds in a relationship, which is fate control and behavioral control. Fate control is the ability that an individual has to affect their partner's outcomes. So, if an individual decides to do something that won't necessarily affect them, but it will affect their partner. That is them having fate control over their partner. Behavioral control is the power that an individual has to change their partner's behavior or actions. So, for example, if one partner decides to call the other on the phone, the individual receiving the call will most likely stop what they're doing and accommodate the call, thus changing their current behavior or action. Thiebaud and Kelly claim that different patterns of exchanges are formed in order to cope with differentiating levels of power that help us to continue to maximize our rewards while also dealing with the costs that we are dealt. And these different patterns of exchanges are the given matrix, the effective matrix, and the dispositional matrix. The given matrix is the internal and external constraints that an individual faces when making behavioral choices. External or environmental factors are out of the control of the individual, so anything like family disputes or unacceptance of the relationship from outside, whereas internal factors are the lack of skills that your partner may have that you hold, making certain activities unlikely. To a certain degree, the given matrix is considered the hand that we are dealt, or the things that we're forced to deal with from outside factors. Now, the effective matrix, which builds off of the given matrix, is the transformations that an individual is willing to partake in. So, say there are family disputes or unacceptance of the relationship from outside, an individual may cut off those that are involved in the dispute or the unacceptance in order for their relationship to flourish. Or in terms of internal factors, if one partner is good at something, like dancing, the other partner may take dance lessons so that now they can go dancing together. The last matrix, the dispositional matrix, represents the beliefs that both partners hold regarding relationships in general. So, for example, the expectations that an individual has about how one should act in regards to relational issues will affect their overall dispositional matrix, depending on if their feelings are the same or if they vary. Now, within these matrices, several forms of exchanges take place. The first form we're going to discuss is the direct exchange, which is when two partners reciprocate a cost and reward. So one partner does something like a chore or a favor, and in return they receive a reward. So it's a direct cost for a direct reward. A generalized exchange is an indirect reciprocity, and it involves one person giving, the receiver receiving, and then responding, but not directly back to the first person. So, for example, if one person decides to help their neighbor move, pack up and move, the recipient is now unable to return the favor as they will be relocated. So instead, they return that favor to a new neighbor, and they continue the exchange within a social network. The last exchange we're going to discuss is the productive exchange, which is an exchange where both partners give and receive simultaneously. So if two partners work together on a project, they are both dealing with the cost of having to work on it, but they're also both receiving the reward of finishing the project at the same time. So now some final thoughts on the theory. It's widely based on and commonly compared to economics, as in the sense that we seek rewards for little cost and we evaluate the values and worth to determine if the relationship is a good investment of our time and to see if it's in our best self-interest. And we can see social exchange theory present in almost all relationships that we examine, but friendships and romantic relationships are usually the most relevant, as these are the relationships that we have the most control over. A visual example of the theory we can see in the final scene of the movie Tarzan and Jane, where Jane struggles to leave Tarzan and to go back home. She is evaluating what her options are with the help of her dad using the comparison level for alternatives. So ultimately she decides to stay, but she does do that evaluation for us, which we can see right here.
Jane, dear, I can't help feeling that you should stay.
Daddy, please
please don't. We've been through all of this. I couldn't possibly. I belong in England and with you, with people. And
But you love him. Go on. What am I doing? Captain, tell them that you never found us, eh? After all, people get lost in the jungle every day. Right? Doodle pip.
All right, so the last point that we're going to touch base on is the evaluation criteria. So social exchange theory is often criticized for not accurately presenting humanity as a whole, questioning every individual's actuality of calculating their relationships in the capacity that social exchange theory claims that they do. So this leads to social exchange theory being untestable as well, or very difficult to test, due to individuals' concepts of cost and rewards not being clearly defined across the board. So those two evaluation criteria are often criticized when talking about social exchange theory. But overall, that is the basics of social exchange theory and kind of how it works. And thank you guys so much for listening.